this afternoon. Can folks hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. We're so pumped to have you join us this afternoon. I hope everyone is enjoying the lab. Fun to think about how fast this year is going. Okay. So we are recording these sessions to post on the PSCCN website. If you're not comfortable with being recorded, just wanted to give you a heads up now, so you can either keep your screen off or feel free to watch the video later and exit the presentation now if you're not comfortable with being recorded. But if you are, we will again allow for your questions and our conversation today to be available for folks to see later on. And so I'm going to give it just another minute or so. And while we wait, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the screen. Can folks see the slide? Awesome. Great. So I know that many of us have been on Zoom for a long time or virtually. So you may be familiar with some different virtual meeting etiquette, but in this case, just want to reiterate for today, please mute your computer or device. Feel no pressure to keep your camera on. Show up as you can as you want to, but we do ask that you introduce yourself in the chat with your name, preferred pronouns, and the school and organization that you are representing today. The phenomenal PSCCN team is here in the Zoom meeting, and we'll be monitoring the chat alongside me. So if you have any chat or comments or questions, feel free to put that in there, and we will make sure to get that either during the presentation or at the end. So yeah, please go ahead and introduce yourself. We want to know who's here today. Awesome. So we got Christian on the PSCCN team. You'll hear a little bit more about or from our team. Welcome Angie, welcome Adriana, Dave, Kelly, David, Anna, Naveed, Danica, Jessica, welcome folks, welcome folks. Some familiar names, some new friends and partners. So excited to have everyone here today. All right. Welcome. So you all have introduced yourselves, and I'm not going to be a rude person. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Mercy Daramola, Interim Director of Post-Secondary for the Puget Sound College and Career Network, who houses the Puget Sound Educational Service District. And before I go any further into the presentation, I want to go ahead and do a quick land acknowledgement of people, land, and water. So PSCSD is the housing organization for PSCCN, and across the ESD, we acknowledge the land, the water, and the places that we are that we stand upon and that we inhabit right now. So I'm going to go ahead and read this, what you all see on the screen, but this is something that is a common value and practice across the ESD. So we recognize the way to true reconciliation of our peoples, of our partnerships, of ourselves as a community. Starts with facing and accepting our shared past, rooted in colonization, imperialism, and white supremacy, and also authentically moving towards honoring the indigenous peoples and lands we occupy. PSCSD acknowledge that the regions we support and occupy are the ancestral territories of the Coast Salish people. And as the original stewards of the land, the Coast Salish people are comprised of tribes that span across the Pacific Northwest coast of Turtle Island. PSCSD recognizes there are 29 federally recognized tribes in the state of Washington and 5 tribes in the state that are not recognized by the U.S. federal government. And the region of service that PSCSD operates within includes the tribes of the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Nisqually, Puyallup, Skokomish, Snoqualmie, Stillaquamish, Steilacoom, and Suquamish peoples. PSCSD physical spaces reside on the traditional lands of the Duwamish tribe, the Muckleshoot Indian tribe, and the Puyallup tribe, who historically lived throughout the Black, Cedar, Green, Puyallup, and White River watersheds. The PSCSD's Renton office sits on the ancestral Duwamish village named Skokalco, which means confluence. PSCSD recognizes that our federal government has stolen land and broken treaties, especially the treaties of Medicine Creek and Point Elliott, and we are committed to creating a racially just education system that educates all students on the colonization and the ultimate resurgence of indigenous peoples, traditions, and cultures, where they continue to be an integral part of today's society. By learning to lead with transformational values and disrupting patterns of white supremacy, PSCSD calls to action the practice of second-generation thinking and honoring the people and land. I appreciate you all sitting with me as we share the people, land, and water acknowledgement, and recognize that there are many other ways folks use to recognize the spaces that we occupy. So feel free to share in the chat if there are other resources that you would like to share that we can incorporate into our work moving forward. So today, what can you expect to hear and walk away understanding? So one, understand the background, vision, the strategy, mission, and program model for King County Promise overall. And we also want to make sure folks understand the Promise components that will be in the first phase of King County Promise programming. We also want to get some feedback from you all on some key aspects of Promise, including from the student perspective, the experience, advising elements, and outcomes, what's resonating with you all. From the staffing perspective, the roles of staff who will be doing Promise work and professional development experience for those staff. And then for systems, when we think about the data, how you track student experience, what's required for partners and outcomes. We want to hear from you all as well about that. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're walking away understanding Promise-related dates and touch points, including what does prep look like for phase 1 of King County Promise, and then what's some of the information we can share about the Promise launch timeline. Now, we've heard PSCCN and PSCSD acronym soup, not assuming that you understand what that is, so I'm going to make that really clear really quickly. So PSCCN is the Puget Sound College and Career Network, a small, growing soon, but phenomenal team of folk who work across PSCSD's region in Pierce, King, and a little bit of Kitsap counties to provide a whole host of support and resources to partners who really focus on post-secondary access, attainment, and completion for our students and young people across our region. As you see below, we are committed to removing barriers so first-generation low-income students of color have the opportunity to access and obtain post-secondary credentials, and we're housed at the Puget Sound Educational Service District. Now, I am not alone on this team. We've got some rock stars. So I'm gonna have them introduce themselves since they're on the line, starting with Naveed, then Christian, then Dinda, and then Leela. So Naveed, can you let us know who you are?
Hello, everybody. My name is Naveed Badri. I'm a manager with PSCCN. I'm supporting King County Promise and our different community engagement pieces.
Welcome, Naveed.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christian Granlund. I'm a manager with Puget Sound College and Career Network, about 2 years now, almost 2 years. And thank you all for being with us today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dinda Davis. I'm the program coordinator for PSCCN, and I support the program with financial aid and other various communications.
Hi, I'm Leela Christ. I'm the other program coordinator. I work primarily with budgetary functions and other program support. Thanks so much for being here.
And as I mentioned, my name is Mercy Daramola, Interim Director of Post-Secondary Puget Sound College and Career Network. We do have a few folks who will be joining our team, hopefully in the next month or so. So we're excited to share out as our team continues to expand. But we're so pumped to have you all here today to continue the work they're doing together. So moving on. What is King County Promise? So you're here today because you're curious and want to learn more and engage more. So let's jump right into it. So King County Promise is partnership organizations collaborating to provide advising support to prioritize K-12 and CTC students. So the Promise Partnership sites are comprised of one or more CTC across King County, one or more K-12 and CTC youth serving CBO in King County, one or more Opportunity Youth serving CBO in King County, and one or more K-12 public district or charter school in King County who come together and focus on a prioritized youth population. Question might be then, how do those folks do that work and where they're supported by? And that's where the larger picture outside of the partnerships comes in, which is our team, PSCCN, and our primary funding partner, DCHS, that provides funding support directly to each institution within a Promise Partnership organization, and then overall TA support for implementing Promise strategies to each organization and partnership overall. Now, King County Promise will be a long-term initiative that we intend to start small, do well, replicate, and grow over time. Our goal is that there's expansion over time so that King County Promise is at our CTCs and districts all across King County, and will be supported by leadership and bodies that are able to support the ongoing partnership delivery of Promise work. So there'll be executive leadership teams, practitioners learning network for staff who will be providing advising data and fund development groups, identifying how we can continue to make King County Promise sustainable, and also sharing high quality data to support the work that our Promise staff are doing with our Promise students. Ways to engage youth and young people with an advisory group, and then a regional Promise network team providing learning in between each specific partnership so we can continue to learn and grow across the region. So this is a quote that is hopefully not new to folks, but if it is, cool, I get to introduce it to you because we are looking for the opportunity to design perfectly a system to get the results that we want. As you can see above, that happens when you design a system. So our results that we're looking for is that for 7% of our students across the region can earn a post-secondary credential to be able to close opportunity gaps that we see right now. And we're creating a system that focuses on equitable funding, targets supports for students and young people, coordinated pathways as they go from their pre-post-secondary paths into their post-secondary journeys, programming that's student-centered and provides accountability. So the collective vision of Promise, King County Promise, is fourfold. The first is that all youth of color and historically underserved young people can receive high quality support as they choose, pursue, and succeed in the post-secondary paths. So King County Promise does not restrict students to a specific post-secondary journey, rather provides high quality advising no matter where they want to go. And the second part is providing substantial system capacity across K-12, higher education, and communities so that the support that they're providing is equitable to students as they are learning and identifying what journeys they want to go to post-secondary wise, and then once they're actually in those journeys. The third element of King County Promise is looking at how our institutions can make significant improvements so that they can coordinate, align, and simplify the journey to completion. So there's a lot of initiative across the region already that individual and partner organizations have looked at about how can we better align our systems? What are some different things we can do around strategies that can make sure our students are able to get into our systems or their journeys a lot easier? And so King County Promise looks to really come around that effort and think about how we can provide a lot of support focus, and accountability for our institutions so that our students are able to get on going where they want to go in their post-secondary journeys. And then finally, King County Promise is not intended to be a party that we have for the next 15 or so years and then leave once the funding is no longer available in that same way. It's intended to really be something that can be sustainable. So we want to demonstrate to Washington State that the programming, the evidence-based practices, and the staffing levels that are embedded in King County Promise can be replicated so that students across the state are able to have high post-secondary enrollment and success rates. So we don't just want students to get into post-secondary and look around and have fun. We want them to actually be able to successfully complete their post-secondary credentials. So that's something that we're looking for with King County Promise, but in a way to make it sustainable and across Washington State. So the mission of King County Promise, in order to achieve that vision, is to provide so that districts, CTCs, and CBOs supported by PSCCN are able to work in partnership to ensure that our King County students and young people are able to obtain their post-secondary credential through strategies that we share, data, and staff and funding that we share, focus on racial equity, continuous learning, and implementing system change in order to create a sustainable, comprehensive post-secondary success and access system that's highly supported, equitable, and accessible. So essentially, we want to make sure that the work that we're doing together that's delivered by CTCs, districts, and CBOs, that shares different resources and strategies. There's a lot of learning that the promise is embedded in, both the development of how do we want to come together and do some of these shared strategies, but we also want to continue to learn along the way, like what did we do together that works? What can we replicate? What do we say that only works in specific contexts, and more, so that the long-term system that we have for students is really highly supportive for them, but it's really equitable as well. So we know that no matter where a student is, the system of CTC, CBO, and K-12 around them can give them the support that they need to be successful in their post-secondary journeys. Let's dive a little bit more into the strategies. We're going to get to a lot more specific detail a little bit later, but some of the high-level strategies of King County Promise are, as you see on the screen. I want to give a small but insignificant caveat here. We'll talk about it later on in the slide deck as well, but this work that we're presenting to you today is not a sole brainchild of the PSCCN team. It really reflects the best and brightest across the region over the last 4 years of what does it look like to come alongside the idea of providing advising to students in a coordinated way. And so many partners, some of you who are in the room today, some of you who are watching, or some folks who have moved on in different ways, have helped inform what these look like, these strategies. And so just want to say I want to give honor and appreciation to those folks, and look forward to the continual informing of promise work over time by other partners. Some of you here today and others to come. So the 3 strategy areas of King County Promise are, for one, for students to provide them collaborative advisors in high school, CTC, and community organizations. So a student who is in high school knows that a community organization and high school advisor will support them together, as well as when they're in CTC, they'll also get support from a CTC and community organization advisor. And for students, they also get a $1,000 non-tuition grant as they are participating in Promise Advising, which is intended to be a little bit more intensive than current advising. So we want to honor the engagement the students have with that. For staff and King County Promise, there will be dedicated staff providing coordinated K-12, CBO, and CTC post-secondary advising to students and young people at 100-to-1 student ratio. This looks like a lot like some of the work that already is happening for some partners around the region, where a CBO and a CTC, for example, may have a caseload of students that they share and able to communicate across the school day and outside of it to make sure that student is highly supported. And that's something that will be standard within King County Promise, but that will be across the system and build on what's currently in our region. The second element of King County Promise strategies for staff is professional development. So Promise dedicated staff will receive ongoing PSCCN provided professional development to ensure that they are highly supported to be able to do the really critical work they're doing in supporting students and young people. Also, Promise staff will receive common advising resources so that they're able to provide and track consistent content and track student milestones. Again, a lot of this exists in pockets and in more consistent ways across King County, but Promise strategy intends to provide that in a coordinated, concentrated way to the Promise advising staff in the region or in the partnerships. Now, speaking of partnerships, for organizations and partnerships within King County Promise, the 4 different strategies are: one, at the leadership level, really focusing on how Promise leadership bodies can support high quality implementation of the work and really amplify really effective ways of partnership across a collective advising approach. So the Promise leadership bodies mentioned a little bit before are used to help make sure that there's collaborative leadership, is high quality interaction and communication back and forth from Promise leaders that support the Promise advisors that are supporting the Promise students. The second part is assessment and continuous improvement, making sure that at the leadership level of Promise partners, that there's an ability to engage in and monitor regular and individual partnership assessment and improvement plans, so that on an ongoing basis, there's a way to have honest, self-reflective and partnership-wide conversations on how are we communicating well, what's some ways we need to work on providing resources to one another, what's some ways we can mitigate some of the partnership level challenges that may come up, so that advisors and then the students don't have to encounter those barriers. The third one is a fun one, shared data tracking. Data is so critical for us to be able to see not only how our students are doing, but what's working in other areas in the work. So Promise intends to establish some key baseline ways of sharing data that can build on the effective strategies of providing student advising. And then fourth is the money. So Promise has a significant infusion of funds from King County and intends to match that with for our K-12 and CTC partners, again, to get that to that sustainable aspect of Promise that I mentioned a little earlier. So the work that will happen for CTC and K-12 partners is to not just provide the match, but also be thinking about what are ways that we can continue to find sustainable ways to ensure there's high quality ratios for Promise advising and work. So I want to pause there because I've given quite a bit of content and I'm in the work a lot. So it's kind of like I dream about it all the time, but I don't want to assume that everyone does. So I just want to pause and see if there's any questions about the strategies or what's been shared so far. I see one in the chat, and again, the PSCCN team is checking out the chat. So one question is about the equity stipend. How was the $1,000 arrived upon? Is that per year or for the duration of a student's attendance at a cycle? Great question, Anna. So the equity stipend, that was it was an estimate that we provided early on to be able to think about based on how much of the additional advising requirement that's provided for students. What's a way to provide a kind of an equitable appreciation or really a recognition of their engagement. It's not intended to replace all the student needs, but it's intended to be significant enough that a student can use it in whatever way and it can really make a difference. So if a student intends to use that for books or intends to use that to look fly the whole year, that's on the student to be able to determine. So it's something I'm really excited about, it being non-restrictive for students. It's intended to be for one academic year. And then David has a question about actively participate in fundraising initiatives from private and public sources. So okay, so I'm seeing more questions are coming in, which is great. So there's more time for questions. So I'm glad that the well is primed. So I'm gonna answer Dave's question and then move on, but the other questions we'll have time for that in some breakout rooms. So actively participate in fundraising initiatives from public and private sources. So that is a fundraising, so there's a match requirement that's in the legislation for King County Promise funding through King County. That's intentional so that we have a way to have a sustainable source of funding beyond Promise. And so the requirement for K-12 and CTC partners will be to meet that match each year from their Promise funding. And yeah, that's the part that's to actively participate in the fundraising initiatives. Okay, so all these questions are great, truly they are, and so I'll move forward, but there'll be time to dive into them in more detail in the breakout rooms, but also in the larger group as well. So a little bit about the numbers of King County Promise. So phase one of King County Promise, the first round of funding and round of partnerships that we're thinking of will run from 2022 to 2024, fall of next year to a couple years after. So there'll be about $12.7 million from Puget Sound Taxpayer Accountability Account, which is the current major funding source for King County Promise, before additional funds are raised by PSCCN and then matched by our initial partners. We intend to serve about 12,000 students over the next couple of years in the first phase. and intend to have about 60 new advising staff, new and or dedicated advising staff per year across the K-12, CBO, and CTC Promise funded partners. Big numbers, exciting things we're excited about doing. And now, actually really important is we talked a little bit about how King County Promise work. And now the question that I'm sure you're having is like, okay, so who's King County Promise for? It's a really good question, and I'm glad that we have a slide to help you answer that. So King County Promise is for, it's an exclusive focus on youth of color, youth from families at or below 200% of the federal poverty level, youth who identify as LGBTQ+, youth who experience homelessness or foster care, youth with disabilities, and other young people who have been historically underserved in King County, age 26 and under. So King County Promise operates in the realm of high school students, so students primarily in 9th through 12th grade, well, really in high school, CTC students across King County, and then opportunity youth and working young people. Some questions that have come up before around the student population is, if I'm thinking about applying for King County Promise as a partner, how do I know which of these groups is fit? Or there's questions about even more specific populations of students and young people that might be within the Promise population, but don't see it called out explicitly. And the answer to that is, this is the baseline. And we know that there are many initiatives and many partners who have this baseline of students, which is actually a pretty broad group, but then target even more specifically within that. And so that is actually some of the beauty of Promise, is that there's a lot of flexibility within the large container of King County Promise. So for example, if you are an organization that works with East African students and young people, and many of them may not necessarily be, for example, those who may have experienced homelessness or foster care, but then maybe you have a specific population on youth with disabilities, and are within King County and fit some of the other demographics. That's some of the beauty of King County Promise, is that is an approach or a population approach that would work looking at the students and young people who King County Promise targets, or not targets, that's a challenging word, who is designed for. Let's try that. And so King County Promise also intends to have a few different end states, even as we're thinking about the population. We're thinking at the student level. As I mentioned a little bit before, the system that we're designing is to look at post-secondary attainment for the King County Promise youth, young people, to be at 70% with no gap in attainment rates between those who prioritize and their peers. We're also making sure that the partners are really making a collaborative, cohesive, equity-focused system that supports post-secondary transitions. And then again, that's some level of goal for that sustainable approach to King County Promise strategies and supports. Diving more into eligible students is in K-12 for students. Those who are in 10th and 11th grade will receive whole school supports. So the advising strategies, which include cohorts, information about just general college resources and more provided to the whole school, whole building, but a more targeted cohort approach for students who complete a Promise Pledge by fall of their senior year, 12th grade year, so that the high quality advising can really follow them all the way through some of the critical touch points that an element of King County Promise. Again, this is one I'm really excited about. It has really been informed by our partners who work directly with Opportunity Youth, currently unable to help reflect back what are some of the best ways that we can support Opportunity Youth. And so one of those are making sure that students who aren't currently employed and don't already hold a 2 or 4 year degree, or not employed in a job with sustaining wages, that's intended to be a broad enough definition that can capture different populations of Opportunity Youth that we want to make sure are represented in King County Promise, and or students or young people who are enrolled in a re-engagement or alternative program, but also students signing a Promise Student Pledge, which allows for tracking and engagement and outreach. And then finally, for CTC students, There's a couple different tracks students can take in order to be supported in community technical college. One is coming from a Promise partner, either a community-based organization that serves opportunity youth, or coming from a Promise partner high school and have signed the Promise Pledge by their senior year, and or as space allows for the CTC that's supporting Promise students, enrolling kind of brand new on a college campus, on a CTC campus, but meeting the Promise definition of population. Now, in order to serve students, you're going to need partners. So who are partners that are eligible? Very great question. Loving these questions I'm getting from the audience. So the eligible partners, again, may have seen in the slide earlier, there's 4 institution types that are required to be in a part of a Promise partnerships. One are K-12 districts. So all public K-12 districts in King County or any King County charter school serving students in grade 9 to 12 is eligible. And then K-12 and CTC students serving CBOs. Again, another design point that reflected from the tons of engagement we had over time. So CBOs that either support students primarily or only in high school, or primarily or only in CTC, and or CBOs that do bridge work. So support students in high school as they transition and then into their post-secondary journeys are eligible. Opportunities serving CBOs. So knowing that there are overlaps in supporting students as they transition into post-secondary, but there's a specific skill set and expertise that your youth serving CBOs have in working with students who are coming from a range of different perspectives and needs. And so that's a specific track we want to make sure is an institution type called out in a Promise partnership. And then finally, our community technical colleges. So those all non-King County are eligible public 2-year colleges. Promise partnerships will be comprised of one of each, at least one per institution type. And each entity will receive direct funding from King County through the APOSTA funds. Pause there and see if there's any additional questions that have risen up so far. Priming the pump once more. Okay. A question around how this project will work with WASAC and the roadmap project. Will in-kind contributions be accepted or only direct monetary, and more. So questions from the earlier slides, which is good. Let that sink in, soak in a bit. Okay, great. Okay, so if there are no questions on this slide here, it's gonna be more time in breakout rooms. Okay, great. That's gonna be my the refrain I'll use. More time in the breakout rooms. It's true. So I'll move on to a little bit more about how King County Promise work. So talk a bit about King County Promise. We intend to have kind of phase 1 this fall, next fall, 2022 to 2024. So let me kind of zoom out a bit so we can get a sense of what's coming up and what does phase 1 look like and what does phase 1 mean. So it's intended to be a phased implementation plan. Our long-term goals being that all King County CTCs and public high schools are participating in Promise partnerships. But backing up to where we are today, there'll be a release of the RFP for Promise partnerships in Q4 of this year, which somehow is not too far away, which is a little wild to think. And partnerships will be selected in Q1 of next year, 2022, with planning to happen in Q2, and then launch of partnerships Q3 of next year, essentially fall as academic years begin. Programming will then continue in 2023. And then because the first funding cycle is 2 years, Promise partnerships in phase 1 will have the opportunity to renew contracts in 2024 for another 3-year cycle of Promise funding. So a 5-year cycle to start off. And then phase 2 after we kind of learn what works, what we want to change from the first phase rollout, phase 2 of Promise Partnerships will launch with the Q4 release in 2023 of our RFPs. And then that RFP will be for a 3-year cycle. And so this is intended to allow for folks who may see Promise opportunity now and think, COVID's happening, there's a lot going on. We don't know if we want to apply right away or may not get selected in this first go around of the Promise implementation plan, but know that what will feel like right around the corner is an opportunity for the second phase of Promise Partnerships. And those who apply for Promise Partnerships year 1 may want to know, or phase 1 may, and get selected, may not want to, as they say, we're doing all this work for just a 2-year contract. The intention is this for something to be really sustainable. So the potential and goal for 5 years is kind of like a cool aspect of the phase 1 partnerships. So the goal for King County Promise, as we think about applying, so the step-by-step process that will happen is that interested organizations will review Promise strategies, the phase 1 requirements, and identify potential partners, and then come together with prospective partnerships to create a joint application for the phase 1 RFP. And then PSCCN, alongside with our DCHS partners, will review applications and select phase 1 partners. And then phase 1 partners and PSCCN together will prepare for fall 2022 implementation, so that there is intended to be significant support after the selection of the RFP or phase 1 partners and before the actual implementation of phase 1 strategies, so that so that's not so there's a lot of intention of really making sure that folks are supported all the way through. And what we're going to do in just a bit is kind of go into a little more chance to go deeper into strategies and be able to talk through what stands out. Some more of the questions that come up in the chat will walk you through. And just to get a sense of, since the RFP is coming up pretty soon in Q4 this year, the goal is for PSCCN to provide intentional work sessions for interested partners to learn more about some of the budgeting requirements, student outcomes, partnerships, and more to prepare for high quality RFPs. And so our goal is to have them all throughout the month of September, so that there's a lot of time to be able to dig deeper into what some of the strategies are, what some of your questions are, some of the things that we know we're interested in learning from partners that we don't know yet at the program design level is how are some of the impacts of COVID and the time since we started designing King County Promise. What are some of the things that are coming up for folks, and how can we at the PSCCN level learn and mitigate some of those things, and or provide some different alternatives as we think about really supporting folks for high quality Promise applications and phase 1 implementation. So I'm gonna pause here and see in the chat, checking it. Again, I know this is quite a bit of content, and but we also want to make sure folks feel really informed and are able to have some key dialogue. So feel free to pop in questions here as we go along. So what's unique in King County Promise? One of the questions that came up that I'm seeing is, how would this project work with WASAC or some of the other ongoing initiatives and work that's across our region, our state, local partnerships already. And I say a beauty of King County Promise is because it's already built on the best of what's already happening, the hopes of partners who are already doing work. King County Promise is intended to do some of our same things in a different way, but adding some new flavor to it. So some of the unique things about King County Promise is a role that PSCCN is excited to play, which is providing some cohesion across multiple program areas and partnerships. Knowing that we have that in pockets, some places, in really cool areas. We have the example of Seattle Promise of what it means to have a district and community college system work together well, to have key leadership working together in a consistent way. But that's the role the King County Promise will have across the region with PSCCN. Maintain and focus on equity gaps. Equity is intended to not be addendum or parsley sprinkled on top. That doesn't really marinate in. We want to make sure that equity is grounded in the work that we're doing. So when we think about from the student level, the staff level, and partnership levels, what does high quality, equitable focus on post-secondary success look like? That's something we're looking to learn alongside our partners and lead together. And also use effectively, but also leverage the funding that we're getting from PASTA. So it's a large funding source, but there's also a lot of need that's also been exacerbated by COVID. We want to make sure that at the PSCCN level, we're looking at how we make sure we use funds well and support the ongoing programming from our partners, but also the upcoming and emerging needs that we don't know will happen just yet. So PSCCN's role as the supporting organization across Promise partnerships will be some of what we currently do, the TA support, partnership support. You may have partnered with PSCCN before in some of the opportunities we provided through financial aid trainings that some of our staff online have led before. Some of the work we're currently doing across Pierce County with providing partnerships support for districts and colleges who are working together. So that's a lot of the role that we currently play and will continue to play with King County Promise. We'll also continue to work at the system level, making sure that with the buy-in and the willpower of our leaders at of our CBO, CTCs, and K-12, we can think about what are the policies that really have been more impactful to student progress than student actual actions. So we look at FAFSA a lot, but how often are we able to think about changing some of the policies that impact students' ability to actually get financial aid? So that's some of the work that PSCCN will continue to do and think about building that accountability and more. So that's one thing that we're really excited about that's new from King County Promise that we continue to really focus on. Some of the other things that are new, let's take some water, is really thinking about the connected advising staff that are in and outside of school, school day. I want to pause and see if there's anyone on the line. Feel free to raise your hand or do any reaction. If you have an example of a high quality partnership that you've been a part of that was either from a CBO or a K-12 staff who was able to say, hey, I have a student, I can't get to them in the school day, but can you get to them after school, or vice versa? Has anyone ever experienced that in partnering from a school to a community organization, or from a K-12 school to a CTC partner? Anyone on the line? Okay, I see a thumbs up, great. So that's some of what we are excited about having with King County Promise, so that the advising is that doesn't rely on seemingly a more proactive staff, so that usually that's what happened, or and maybe by chance, but really something that's systematized, so that in a partnership, there's expectation and then that's supported, that support as well for the advising to happen across the school day, that supports student transition, as well as that non-tuition grant for students. Is again, we know that $1,000 both is a lot of money, but also does not cover all the costs for students who are going to school. But it's intended to really reflect that we intend for students to get a lot more advising than they may usually get right now, or more high quality or high touch way. So we want to make sure that that's supported through that. And then second is the staff. So that collaborative advising, again, making sure that that is not by chance, but really supported through shared data. So a staff person can have a more efficient way to figure out how do we support students in our shared caseload in a targeted way, but also is surrounded by like, what are some of the key milestones that students should be reaching, and then how can we use that collaborative advising to support that progress for students. The professional development, again, some of the work that we build on from the region is work like CCLI from our phenomenal partners at CCER that really bring together in a collaborative way folks in different functional areas that support students and young people as they're transitioning. So the professional development with King County Promise, what we're excited about, what's unique and new about that is being able to take that and be able to add in the perspective or the input from our college partners who are also working with students in a shared caseload, provide learning across, but really make sure that we're thinking about how can we learn both ways. So not only how can we share information about where students and staff should be, but also learning from the partners who are actually implementing the support and advising from students. So we can learn from a partner might say, hey, this curriculum that we provided here is great, and we're seeing the students are asking for this, or we're seeing this strategy actually works now. So the professional development directly from the folks who are doing the advising work is something that I'm pumped about being able to have as part of King County Promise. And then the common advising resources. So we have a lot of initiatives on both ends of the post-secondary transition field pipeline. So what does it mean to support a student while they're in CTC or in K-12? What does it mean to support a student while they are in CTCs? And we want to make sure that that is something that's shared across, so that the advisors are able to have a sense of not just where we get students to the end of or the start of the education system that they're in, but what happens before and after, so those advisors are well informed and have some key milestones and content they're working on. And then a lot of the system work, the funding, partnership supports, assessment, data, and financial match. A lot of those are new elements that we're excited to add to support not only student-facing work, but also system-facing work as well, so that a student doesn't have to be lucky to be in a place that has maybe an advisor that has promised staff, or a school that has promised advisor, but really make sure that that's something that can be system-wide, because the promise ratio of 100 to 1 for students to staff means that not every student who is in the promise population theoretically will be served right away. But the hope is that with the system level work, that there's an ability to amplify what's going on in the school building, or both on K-12 and CTC sides, so that students outside the promise population are also benefiting. Now, as one quick reminder about why promise is important, this is a slide deck that we usually have a lot more detail about why promise is important, but we recognize that by coming to these sessions, you already believe in it. So you already may know that one, that there's been an impact in students enrolling into post-secondary because of COVID. So this is from fall of last year, 2020, from NSC, looking at based on different school types, high school types, what was the increase in students not enrolling in post-secondary. And so not to be doom and gloom, but more reality that students have chosen to not attend post-secondary, but also the options of attending post-secondary are just different for students and young people. We're seeing an impact. Education is still important. Post-secondary credentials are still important. And we recognize that there's a lot going on in our system, in our world, that's impacting students' journeys after high school. And so that's some of why King County Promise is so critical right now. And that's paired with this stat that we started our research with, or the development of King County Promise with, which is thinking about, again, this is from CCER's work with the College and Career Leadership Institute, looking at students are really understanding the options after high school, or the options about going to post-secondary. It's really delivered by the staff in building. And so the role of in-building staff, the role of advising staff, the role of adults in the school day, or trained adults is so critical. So that's why King County Promise delivery is not lightly focused on the advisors. So the role of having advisors facing students who is trained well, who has provided data and inputting data, because these folks are the ones who are able to be informing students and young people about what their journeys look like after high school and supporting them along the way. So I have talked as fast as I could because we want to make sure we didn't want to go too much into detail, or we didn't want to spend too much time on the promise like overview, but we want to give you all time to really dive into some of that the thought. So what we'll do now is put you into breakout groups to be able to think through some of the what we shared so far, and really have a bit of a talk back, both asking us questions, but also being able to like think through the strategies that we mentioned, what stands out to you, and more. So I'm going to stop my share for just a bit. Is that a true statement? I think I'm going to stop my share. Yes. for just a bit, and then just gonna do a behind the scenes check. Leela, is there something I should be saying as far as choosing the breakout room, or do I put the slide up for choosing breakout rooms?
I think I have the rooms ready. People should be able to self-select into the group they align with. So let's see.
Okay, perfect. So to do that, I'll just put the slide up really quickly and then move folks into the breakout room. Perfect. So we're gonna take, we're gonna take about 20 minutes to go into breakout rooms, because here on this slide is really looking into a little bit more detail some of the strategies that you'll see in King County Promise over time, but also in phase 1. So the PSCCN staff, we're going to have you in either a room for somebody who's curious about the student staff experience. So thinking about the strategies that we'll have here, and the PSCCN staff will present the PowerPoint. We want to know what stands out to you about the student staff experience. And so as we think about what's new from King County Promise, what's already existing that you see aligning or dovetailing with King County Promise strategies, we want to know it all from your perspective. And then systems. So anyone who's interested at the organization level or a partnership level or kind of even bigger picture level, what stands out to you about the systems experience as well. So we want to take time to do that. And so what you'll be looking at is this kind of overview of the strategies that looks at for our pre-college partners, so those who are supporting students before they get into post-secondary. Here's what we look for you to provide to students and young people. And then in that transition space, which is really critical, how students go from one to the next. Here's what we're looking at. And then for our post-secondary partners, what are some of the things that will be required or that are part of King County Promise. At the bottom is, as again, it's a little bit more of a summary of what PSCCN will provide at that kind of the partner overview Promise-wide level. But we'd love to know if there's anything that stands out to you about that as well. So as we mentioned, I think there's an option for you to choose your own adventure. So we are at 4:58. So we'll close the rooms at 5:19 to give us about 20 minutes. But you'll have at least 2 PSCCN staff in there who will help facilitate and ask questions and pop up the Jamboard. So it's been a pleasure talking to you, but now I'm excited for you to talk back to us for about 20 minutes. So we've got some folks already joining the different rooms. The systems approach room is popping already. So come on into that one. The student and staff experience room is not yet. So there's plenty of room in that one if you'd like to join. Cool, cool. Student and staff systems approach is still popping. Okay. All right, all right. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. Okay, okay. Dinda, I believe, are you joining me in the systems approach room?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So I'm gonna go to that room since it's pretty full right now, and then can you hang out here in this larger room? Okay.
I was gonna offer, since that room's pretty full, did you want me to switch it up and join you, Mercy?
Yeah, sure. I'm open. And if we might need to just have them both be just 2 breakout rooms, because there's only one person student and staff experience, we might just have it be maybe a little bit more of a balanced conversation.
I can be a floater or something and go back and forth if we want.
Sounds great.
So what did you want me to do? Mercy, do you want me to join or?
Can you hang out here, see if there's anyone who needs help joining?
Okay, great.
Yeah. I see Hillary and Lisa. Do you all need help joining a room?
No, I just was wondering if there's any space you'd like me to join.
Oh, awesome. I think it's looking like everyone is going to systems approach room. There's only one in the
Yeah,
student staff
yeah.
experience. I think what we might do is just encourage, like move folks into the student staff room and just have it be just 2 breakouts.
Yeah, interestingly, knowing kind of Dave is a school board member, and looking at some of these folks are total experts in students and staff. So it's just interesting that they made that choice.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna maybe have folks go into the hey Naveed.
Hello.
So
I
saying that
just
it
wanted
looks
to
like,
share the Jamboard with folks.
ooh, thank you. Well, saying that it looks like the systems approach room is pretty much everyone.
Mhm.
So let's
Yeah.
just, how about we just do like just 2 breakouts? So no specification, just 2 breakouts and have maybe talk about students and talk about systems level.
Okay. Christian, do you
Okay.
want to hop into mine?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay,
Okay.
so I'll move into systems, but be expected to be moved again. Is that the plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dina, do you mind doing that? Making it, I'll make the announcement in that room, but then do you mind moving people?
Yeah.
Just anybody?
Just anybody. I'll let them know they'll
Okay.
be moved around.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Give me
Sounds
just one minute before I move. Just 1
Sounds
minute.
good.
I'll let people know.
good. Sounds good. Thank you, Naveed.
No worries. Yeah, I assumed folks would be able to do it in their respective breakout rooms, but that's the piece there. I'm going to hop over.
All right. That looks like a minute, Leela, right? So I can't hear you on mute.
It's not always letting me press the buttons either because I've been having so many technical issues with Zoom. So let's look. I still don't have complete functionality here. Like some of my buttons are missing.
Okay. So do you want me to put you in?
Yeah, I think I was going to be in that first student room initially. So feel free to put me in there, and then I may bounce out and have to come back in. It's so aggravating that like this is so crazy.
I think Mercy has announced, right?
I think it's frozen. I can't see anything
Oh,
in the chat at all.
Okay, but she said to give her a minute, so I'm just
Okay.
also if you leave.
Okay. So when I had to leave and then it immediately restarts Zoom. So strange. Okay, but at least now I can see what the breakout rooms all look like.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think that's good. So do you want me to? I don't see you.
I'm pushed into the student staff experience room, but I haven't joined yet because I have a choice because I'm co-host. So I can click join and then go in there.
Okay, then I'll go in systems approach.
Okay.
So there won't be anybody to talk to.
All
All right.
right.
See you later. Let me go and track questions.
Yep.
We'll definitely send a follow-up.
Having technical issues. So sorry I jumped in late. Are there any questions that you wanted me to record that I might have missed?
No, we're about to just jump in.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure.
Awesome. So great. Thanks for joining us, y'all. Yeah, so really wanted to be able to have a moment to be able to go over kind of some of the student level strategies and some kind of and staff level strategies, as well as the system level strategies. Wanted to kind of go through a slide that Christian's on right now to be able to kind of give you some framing on that, and then to maybe think about that for a minute, look it over, and then be able to kind of put your reactions, your thoughts, your feedback into a Jamboard, and then we can kind of go around and discuss as a larger group, or as a smaller group here. I will share my screen. Christian, do you want to provide some framing on slide 44?
Yeah, sure. You said you're going to share. You want me to share?
I can share.
All right. All right. Can everybody see this okay? Are you able to go into present mode, Naveed?
Yeah, I can hide all my tabs.
There we go. That makes it a little bigger. So essentially the way we have this organized, and for folks who have been a part of some of the pre-planning and some of the refinement phase, this may look familiar. This may be new to some folks. But essentially the left column, we have essentially the different student pathways that will exist. And then it kind of narrows as they get to their post-secondary to their CTC. So essentially a unique aspect of King County Promises engagement and centering of opportunity youth. But that work really happens through our CBO partners. So in a similar way of how districts and high schools, in other maybe traditional promise programs, funnel students from the high school to the college level, we are looking to work with CBOs to help support opportunity youth going to a post-secondary program. So they would function in a similar way of how high schools do. And this will be a mandatory partnership aspect of King County Promise. So so for districts and colleges who want to set up a partnership, you would have to establish a partnership with a CBO or an entity who serves opportunity youth and supports them in post-secondary advising, post-secondary transition. So just something to keep in mind for how the partnerships will work. So there's the CBO opportunity youth pathway, and then within a individual high school or district, you may have, we're thinking about it as kind of these two other pathways. So there's the students who will be attending the partner college and the specific enrollment and transition and advising supports they would receive if they were attending a college. So I see we got Allison in here from Green River. So if we had students from Auburn High School who are intending to go to Green River, there'd be pathway supports to help those students. If there were Auburn students who weren't planning on attending Green River, they would still receive advising supports in the high school as much as we'd be able to provide through promise supports, through additional advising, through financial aid tracking and support, through match support and that college exploration piece. There's still the whole building and senior class cohort support that would occur. And along with that, there would be that specific pathway support to the CTC partner. So then this next column in the middle is essentially the transition supports that occur between the high school and the districts and the CBO and the opportunity youth pathway. So those are similar, but meant to be, I guess, customized or to the institutions, to those specific needs of the institution. So the CBOs are going to have unique needs versus the partner, the high school. So you can see one of the main differences, quarterly bridge programming versus summer bridge programming. So we know the cohorts for high schools are going to happen once a year and kind of follow that traditional academic calendar, whereas CBO supports can really happen any time of year, or transition supports for CBOs could happen any time of year and will need to happen more frequently. And then that leads into kind of basically everybody being at the post-secondary level. So some of the unique aspects there are the equity stipend disbursement, the ideas that there will be support for enhanced case management, and that the advisors at that level can really act as academic advisors, but help with whatever students may need. It could be basic needs, it could be SEL navigation and support. But that really they're that main point of contact for students who are at the CTC level. And then really what the role of PSCCN is throughout all of this is supporting cross-system data management so that, you know, we'll be able to track students as they go through that entire experience. We'll also, it's a very fancy way of saying it, facilitation of multi-tiered continuous improvement structures. So we're going to be meeting with administrators. We're going to be meeting with the staff who are seeing students on a regular basis. We're going to be having a youth advisory board. So we really want to maintain a focus on continuous improvement, receiving feedback from leadership, receiving feedback from the practitioners who are working with students on a regular basis, and making sure we're working that feedback into our programs. And then conversely, putting that back out into the form of professional development and supporting the staff who are there, supporting the students, and also enhancing some of the systems. So it could be how we use the data management systems. It could be the operations related to how we track students. But making sure we're taking that feedback and putting it back into the system. And then, like I said, we'll be remaining student focused in the feedback we receive and looking for opportunities for student engagement and remaining student centered that way. So this is high level of kind of how students will flow through the system, how high schools and CBOs could work together, and kind of the role PSCCN plays in this. One thing that's not really reflected in this chart is CBOs at the high school and district level. So they will actually also be a partner in this process, but their pathway isn't different, I guess, than the high school pathway. So that is, there'll be CBOs who, we know there's CBOs who support students in the high school, but we also are making it a mandatory component of having CBOs outside of the high school who support our opportunity youth and that transition into college. So again, this is high level. Any questions about just kind of this general flow of students or anything you're seeing on here?
One thing that kind of comes to mind, this is just sort of just an observation regarding when students do matriculate to the CTC, is also like working with our trio of MESA partners, because these are students that also would feed into those grant funded programs as well. So how did what were the thoughts on sort of them as being partners in this work?
I think so, you know, in a lot of ways, we're intentionally being broad in how we want this work to look and play out. So you know, I think we're all kind of the understanding that we hope this isn't like a boutique program that gets siloed and then becomes difficult for students to navigate. So we really do want to find ways for CTCs, for high schools to really integrate the services we're providing into the things that are already existing on their campus. We don't want to tell you how to do that. We want you to tell us how you're going to take these resources and really enhance the things that you have going on at your institution. So we want to leave it intentionally flexible, and we also want to make sure that certain things are happening certain interventions are happening to these specific populations of students.
So I'm trying to think a little bit about, so she talked earlier about the RFPs. So are you looking for districts to, in collaboration with a CTC or a CBO or all three, to put together some kind of proposal that then we bring to this network, and is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah, I believe that's the idea. We're not playing, the county is really owning the RFP process. And so I want to make sure I'm not telling you any of the wrong information, but from my understanding, the idea is that partnerships would come together and apply as a single partnership. So is that accurate? I hope I'm not saying the wrong thing.
You cut out, Christian. Were you calling on me?
Yeah, I was saying,
Yeah.
was my
That's
description accurate?
Yeah, my understanding that's accurate.
Okay, okay. That we know that these partnerships are going to need support, and so we are looking at ways that, if needed, PSCCN can try to play matchmaker if you don't have like a natural or an already established relationship with a CBO that works with opportunity youth. It could be something where maybe the college does, or we could try to support in building some of those connections.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking like, particularly from our Tukwila, we're a small district. So this sounds to me a lot like a grant proposal in some ways. And so, we don't have a full-time like grant writer, and we typically go out and find somebody to help us do it. Is there going to be like a process, what is it that what's the criteria, what's the rubric you're looking for, to evaluate these proposals? Is that kind of stuff going to be available?
Yeah, the plan is that will be available. We don't have that yet, and it's still probably being developed right now. The county's leading that work, and I believe we're going to be supporting them in that process. But the idea is that there will be a rubric that is publicly shared.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it does. I think you're right in your assessment that it sounds really similar to like a grant process.
Dave O'Keefe at Highline College. So same kind of questions that Dave has. It's the process for determining who to partner with. What if everyone wants to partner with a certain organization? They'll get overextended, I'm sure. So it might be kind of an organic thing. But do colleges necessarily want to partner with Green River and Highline? So there's a lot of questions to clarify around that. Also wondering about the funding ranges. Is that information you have? Is it public yet, or is that something that we should approach the county about?
Yeah, I don't have specifics available on funding ranges at the moment. Hopefully we can share more specifics on that in the near future. As far as your question around those partnerships, I believe, if I'm again trying to recall conversations we've had in the past, the hope is that as we scale up, we're building unique partnerships. We know that it's a web. Highline could have a partnership with Highline School District as easily as they could with Renton School District or Kent or Tukwila. There's a lot of partnerships that could potentially happen. I think as we're building up, we want to make sure we're giving opportunities for people to build these connections. So it wouldn't necessarily, you'd essentially have to make the choice of who is it that makes the most sense for us to partnership. Let's say if Highline College was being approached by 3 or 4 school districts or something like that, I think you would have to define who you want to work with. And maybe there's also potential that you could propose something. Well, let's see. I don't want to give guidance on that. I don't want to give guidance on RFP where I don't know for sure. I'm more speaking to the intent of what I understand from the conversations that we've had so far. So there may be more specific guidance that comes out on that later. Like I said, that's in the works. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing and then have you be misinformed or anything.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Dave. I know Leela's on the line tracking these questions too, and our intent too is to make sure that these questions that, either we're not able to answer in the moment or information that kind of comes out will be there, and we can track them and we can add them to an FAQ and we can add them to our website for folks to be able to view too. So I appreciate these questions.
I have more of like a systems operations question regarding the 60 more new advising staff that you guys mentioned in a previous slide. So is that would be 60 like advising staff that would be across, of course, all of those that submit RFP and were awarded this opportunity. But are those college and high school like advisors, or is that, I guess, imagining this is like an individual who is sort of located at one of the two entities, but of course follows the student from pre-college through post-secondary. Is it a virtual position? I'm just trying to think too, like I'm in the weeds a little bit right now, so.
Yeah, good question. I believe the current intent is that they would be, yeah, at one of the partnership institutions. So somebody's, these partner institutions are in charge of using the funds to hire you know, if you all got a promise advisor at Green River, they would be an employee of Green River College. But they would have the responsibility of kind of working with this cohort of students. So with that, it would be really up to those institutions in terms of how they wanted to deploy them, I guess.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. Other questions?
I have a question. So looking at, hi everybody, Adriana Sheeher from College Possible Washington. We are a nonprofit in the access and success space. I mean, in looking at this chart, I was just curious. I'm noticing that there's CBOs kind of placed in the pre-college and transition. Have you all thought about like opportunities for the CBOs to show up more often in the post-secondary partner space, or how you all are thinking about that kind of pipeline of support of students and CBOs?
I think that's something that definitely could happen and has been talked about. What's what I would I think the key piece is that as the mandatory component is that support and I guess funneling of opportunity youth to the CTC system. So if in the RFP process they wanted to say the continued support will occur between that CBO and the CTC, I think that's something that would be really interesting and would be a great proposal if there was kind of that continued support from both ends. But it's I don't think we're necessarily putting parameters as much on kind of the CBO engagement throughout the college process. So that's just a vague way of saying I'm not fully sure. I think there's opportunities, I think. So again, being intentionally flexible to see which direction folks can go with this. And again, we may get more, I'll just put a caveat with everything we're saying is it may get more refined and more specific as the county comes out with guidance around the RFP process. But I think that's a good question that we should take back and make sure is clarified.
Another question I was just kind of curious about. So the legislature is funding this through the PTSSA account. Has the legislature provided any guarantees? I know that I followed that legislation and it was kind of tossed in at the last second one session. And I'm a little leery of, has the legislature provided any guarantees as to how long this will be funded? I know they intend to fund it. You know, I mean, it's basically the sales tax from the Sound Transit work, but do you have any any kind of guarantee from the legislature that they won't just suddenly pull it 1 year?
Yeah, I'm not sure the specific components. We've signed the contract with the county. It is a renewable. It's a 5-year contract with, I think the intention new every 5 years. So I suppose there's always the possibility that they could back out at one of those 5-year points. Although I've seen no indications of that. Now, I guess, we'll see where we're at in 5 years. If COVID changes things, if, you know, a lot of things could happen. But yeah, I haven't seen any intention, and the county is supportive of the work we're doing and wants to fund it. So
Yeah, I'm not worried about the county backing out, but my understanding is the source of those funds is the state legislature. They allocated it to the county to, you know, distribute it and so forth. So I'm more worried about what the legislature may do with it. And what, I don't know what agreement if there's an actual agreement between the legislature and the county that it will be guaranteed for 5 years or something.
yeah, I'm unsure of that too. I don't know the details on the kind of the in between the state and the county, but I think, yeah, leaning on the fact that we do have a contract at least for 5 years. So
Okay, that's a good sign. Yeah.
Great. Other questions?
There'll be an opportunity to sign up for one of those work sessions coming up once you guys solidify the dates, right?
Sorry, say that again.
There'll be an opportunity to sign up for one of the work sessions once those dates and times are solidified.
Yes, for sure. Naveed, did you want to share about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, those are intended for folks who are interested in applying for the RFP. We have those tentative dates kind of set right there. We're just finalizing the Zoom details, and we'll send it out to this group for sure, and all the other different groups that we've communicated with so far for opportunities to join for those.
Okay, thank you.
I think I just wanted to share how excited I am about this. This is a really good idea to have CBOs and colleges and school districts working together. And, you know, I'll learn some new things about a CBO that I've never, like College Possible. I'm just learning about them today. So I'm excited about the next steps and how we're going to identify the right partners to work with and working together. And we're better together.
Absolutely. I think that's you know, we've got the structure like between students going from one institution to another, and our support as an intermediary. But I think really at the end of the day, finding a way to facilitate just conversations between these different partners is so valuable in and of just that. If it were only just, hey, we're going to have people talk and make sure these systems line up, I think that would be a huge benefit in and of itself. So I think that's an understated value in this. So I totally agree with you, Dave.
Yeah, and I agree from a student's perspective. I know we have trouble at our high school providing enough advising support, counseling support for students as they're planning out their, you know, their post-secondary future. And so, and I know for a fact we've had students that get into a post-secondary thing and then have to drop out because they haven't been supported. So, you know, I mean, all these support, I mean, the you know, the K-12 or post-secondary system and that whole transition is a lot more complicated than when I went to school. And so, you know, it's really, particularly for the set of students that you're serving here, you know, first generation students, this advising stuff is going to be, I think, invaluable, and one of the key ways to, I know in the roadmap projects, we started out 10 years ago and said we were going to double the post-secondary, you know, and we've only gone from like 24 to 30. And so we need that extra bump. And this is the area I think that's going to be really helpful.
Great. Yeah, definitely appreciate that. And we hope it is for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. And I think too, the hope obviously is to lessen lower the counselor to student ratio as well, advisor to student ratio as well, to help with that support. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
And frankly, our counselors, you know, are acting, they spend a lot of their time doing social work because we don't, the K-12 system, I mean, legislators are horribly underfund social work at K-12. And so there's just, yeah, I mean, there's a huge need for advising and counseling and mental health service and all that. Sure.
Well, we are in here for about another minute. I think they made the announcement about a minute ago. There'll be, additional opportunities to ask questions in the larger room too, and then get back to some of the previous questions that folks posed earlier on in the meeting. But any final questions before we kind of are released back into our larger room? Great. Well, we appreciate you working with us on this and taking a look at it and asking such really great questions. Again, all the questions that, regardless of whether we answered them now or needed some more clarification and pieces will kind of come, we've jotted them down and we'll make sure we kind of post them on our website, make sure that folks are aware as we learn more.
Yeah, and I'll just second that. Like, we really encourage questions right now because it's helping us figure out what we need to communicate. So even if you in your head you think, oh, is this a silly question? I'm not sure. No silly questions. We want to make sure we're being as clear as possible. So either asking in this space or entering in the chat, we want to make sure we're cataloging all of those.
Thank you all. You guys are doing great work. I appreciate all your time today and clarification of this. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
Right. All right. Are we heading back to the main room, Naveed? Or we got another minute or so?
I think we have another minute. I'm realizing now too that the other slide was more on the partner level strategies, but I'll display it for folks while we're still in here and we can clarify a few things. But if any questions arise on this, definitely feel free to ask around the larger group when they let us back in.
Can you make it a little larger?
Yes, of course. Pieces about just some clarification, and I know folks can read, but just some of the partnership-wide requirements being kind of the data and sharing MOU to track promise milestones, continuous improvement, which I know we've talked about before, via like a partnership assessment, and be able to kind of track and administer results, as well as just participating in kind of the local promise partnership group. Collaborative advising too, I mentioned the lower ratio, designate staff at 100-to-1 ratio, and then creating promise strategy and delivery plan, and then really kind of put some collaborative leadership. There's different leadership bodies too, that looks like the room's going to close in a second, but different leadership bodies too that folks we are part of to help kind of better bridge the gap and be able to make connections and align systems that we'll be supporting. Oops. And there's some pieces about areas that partners will determine kind of in their process and in their partnerships that I'm sure Mercy will discuss kind of in our session when we come back. Thank you all. I think we can head to the room, and yeah, definitely feel free to ask questions in the larger space.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you over there.
Welcome back, everyone. I was just doing the robot because I don't know if you all are tired, but it's 5:34 on the last day of August. So I think as a person who's from California who loves the sunshine, and I'm a pre-mourner of summer, the first chill means that it's winter. So tomorrow morning, I'll break out my Christmas sweaters. Hopefully that'll hasten the winter season because I'm ready for summer. Okay, thanks, Adriana. I'm not alone. So we have about 25 more minutes. Yes, 35 to 6. We have about 25 more minutes to open up the conversation to continue stuff that we're talking about in our breakout rooms, and or to dive deeper into any more of the questions that are coming up for folks as we are talking through some of the staff strategies or the promise strategies. I do want to pause and see if there's anything that this like a final thought or comment from any of the breakout rooms, because we just got pushed back into this larger one. So is there something anyone wants to close out on as a thought or comment before we move into like the larger Q&A? Okay. So I see there's a question on the promise milestones. How are we thinking about milestones versus student engagement? Okay. That's great. That's great. So Naveed or Christian, the comment in the chat about promise milestones. How are we thinking about what's the milestone versus student engagement?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The way we're thinking about it right now is that there are absolutely like certain milestones that we want to track, things like financial aid completion, college enrollment, college level math and English, those types of things. And then we also want to make sure that we're measuring the work that's happening. And we're still having conversations around what that will look like, because we know it may be different from partnership to partnership, but we know there's a certain floor that we want to establish. We want to make sure that students are being seen by or being able to meet with an advisor however many times per quarter, that they're receiving certain types of transition help. So whether that's support around college placement or maybe meetings advising in order to complete financial aid. So that's still, I think, being refined right now in terms of how we do a good job of measuring the work, and then how do we make sure momentum is maintained with students at hitting those certain milestones.
Yeah, that's spot on, Christian. I think that's an element of promise. I think is our special flavor, our Lowry's or Sazon, is that we care about our students, but our staff, the ones who have so much more of an outsized impact on students. I don't know how often we measure or track and see what works well and what's like that, as Christian mentioned, that baseline of like the right interventions, et cetera, and then actually require that. So we're looking forward to learning that.
I think along those lines, our group talked, a lot about the power that rests with faculty. And so I think it might be good to think through like, what is the long-term engagement with faculty in the strategy of the promise? And like, what are the indicators there? I have no idea what they would be, but I think it's a question we're digging into, because I think it was Dave, you just mentioned really the power that faculty holds, and like if progress really can stop there in different moments, like like it doesn't make sense to avoid faculty then. So engaging them in different ways seems like it's going to be critical for this to work.
Thank you for that. I mentioned to my group in the breakout that Promise has a lot that we've already thought about and considered, but there's also a whole world that we haven't. So I think faculty is definitely one that we haven't as deeply as we have about the advisors. But I was in a meeting with Danica, I think maybe a couple months ago, where you were mentioning the world around Promise or student advisors has changed. So resources in different offices, interaction points with students, faculty, all that's changed. So it will be important to not just pay attention to advisors, but everything around. I think of a tangent of a question. So we'll close out to kind of give you a reminder about next steps for like the RFP and all that. But because there's a lot that Promise can cover, even without talking about faculty, and there's a lot that we want to learn from folks in the first round of Promise funding, those who implement. Would it be more helpful for us to have something that's explicit on faculty, or is it more helpful maybe to keep that as a learning agenda that we kind of track and see and then use for the next round of Promise funding? So should we be upfront with thinking about the faculty involvement, or let that be something that our partners who get funded and then implement, who we can learn from their experiences with faculty?
well, speaking as a non-faculty member, so for what this is worth, I'm leaning towards the second, starting the partnerships and then seeing what happens. Because I think if you start trying to make those parameters now, it's going to delay this path that you're moving towards on the timeline. So it's not to discount the importance of that, because it's vitally important, but it's like, do you want to nail the jello to the wall now or see how it unfolds as we go?
Thank you. I see that David Larson had a different opinion, like on the other option, which is great. And I think so that's something that we have when the promised funding opportunities are released and are more documented. What we have is like the baseline promise, but then some of the other strategies that we know folks are already doing that you can, if somebody wants to go above and beyond and include, that's something that could be included in an application. So the baseline would be promising the advising, but the option to say, like, do you also want to track what faculty involvement will look like is something that we can add into that. And okay, and that's another helpful element to engaging with faculty leadership. Yeah.
David, that's so good. That's been a requirement for some other RFPs in the past, is making sure that it's explicit who at the colleges need to be involved.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm hearing that's a really good and solid thing, faculty. So thank you. We'll definitely take that. And I do want to note too, I mentioned earlier that comments and questions are helpful. Our team is taking all the questions that we're getting from folks over this engagement. So we want to create some sort of FAQs. So even if we can't answer it now, if you have questions that are still arising for you, give it to us. We know there's a lot in the promise container, so we want to make sure we can capture and answer what we can when we can. Dave, I've seen you come off camera. Is there a question you have or a thought?
This is the other Dave, or maybe it's the Dave you're thinking about. But yeah, I'm still trying to get my head around what a project might look like for Highline College. So say we partnered with College Possible, just as an example, and became a promise partner. So would we get funded for an advisor, and would that advisor work with, say we partnered with Highline School District, so we had two partners. Would that advisor work with high school students and college students? Or another question, would Highline School District also have an advisor, say at the high school we were working with, if they also have an advisor in the grant? Are these grants going to be, pretty wide range of roles and people, or is there a typical project you can describe, say from a college point of view?
You're on mute, Marcy.
That's great. So, all right, I want to present the screen so I can share, because you brought up something critical. So our ideal partnership actually has all the institution types together right away, so that there is an advisor at the high school, so Burien High School, Burien Community College, and then Burien CBLA Opportunity Youth, and Burien CBLB in-school students. So thinking about it from the student perspective, actually, what we intend is that a student who is in high school is receiving supports from advisor and community and school. And then when they transition into college, they receive supports in that transition, and then at the college from a college person and a community person, a community advisor. So at a certain point, there may be different caseloads. So the community college, we're thinking in the first year, for example, there won't necessarily be students coming from the high school just yet, so there'll be students brand new on the campus. But the goal is that the advisors are able to communicate and see students who are coming to, like from the CCC coming to them, so they can reach them earlier than usual or have a warm handoff. And the students, the advisors in the high school have trusted partners that they can refer their students to if and when they go to the CTC partner. So there's a couple different pathways. The student doesn't have to go to a CTC partner, but there are some pipeline schools already. So like you mentioned, Highline, for example, if there are students who are going to go, we want to make sure those students have a well-supported, seamless transition into their post-secondary journey. And that's critical to have all 4 different institution types or organization types in one partnership.
Thank you.
I recognize it's 5:45. The PSCCN team talks about promise all the time, so we can go till 9, keep this party going. But don't want to assume that everyone is sees this as their coffee. I can give us a little bit more, just one more reminder about what the next steps for promise look like, just so folks are clear about that. But then have one last squeeze of the lemon if there's any other questions that are coming up. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. And if it just is a quick reminder. Okay. Okay. So as a quick reminder, right now we are planning to have there will be a release of the RFP, of a partnership RFP in Q4 of this year, so that our partnerships are selected in by end of Q1 of 2022 for funding to be the next 2-year process. And our goal is to provide additional support and engagement for folks who are interested in applying throughout the month of September. And there'll be a more official announcement about the RFP release date, et cetera, coming really soon. But our intention is that when you see the RFP, when interested partners see the RFP, it should not be information that's brand new about what promise strategies will look like, who a promise partner could be, what some of the approaches are. Our goal is to not have this be something that catches people off guard, because we really want to make sure that the RFP process really just allows for some really good refinement of strategies, approaches, supports of partnerships, so that these work sessions throughout the month of September will provide really as close as we can get to showing the details of an RFP, but really supporting putting together what does an ideal strategy look like? How do I identify students we want to support? How do we set up really effective partnerships? How do we align some of the promise strategies as baseline with some of the other work that we already have going on in our potential partnerships? So that is intended to be over the month of September. Again, this is a learning journey all the way through. So everything that PSCCN is doing this go around, we're taking feedback in to be able to think about what can we do differently over the next month, but also over the next funding cycle as well, to provide high quality education and preparation for our partners. And then if there's questions and more, as far as some of the work that we talked about, we have a ton of different ways for folks to get engaged, to sign up for our PSCCN newsletter, or contact us at psccn@pscs.org. We'll be having a King County Promise specific email pretty soon, but in the meantime, you can go to either Google King County Promise or go to Bitly. It'll take you directly to our website, where this presentation and our most up-to-date promise materials are being hosted. And these info and feedback sessions that we're having are intended to be, again, part of the engagement journey for folks. And are these single sessions or is it works? So they all iterate these sessions. So as we hear information from folks or questions, we are getting better at refining how clear the promise messaging is. But what's consistent is the opportunity that's opening up in fall of the RFP, and our goal of making sure folks are prepared and informed about what promise is.
I'm sorry, Mercy. I meant the ones you were showing about the RFP work sessions. Were those single sessions or were those added? Is that the same answer? I was not these ones.
Great question. So there'll be single sessions, but also recorded. So, but also I think it also depends on demand as folks get back into school. And so our goal right now is kind of offer standalone sessions, but that will be recorded and all materials shared. And yes, any questions?
Yeah, and Mercy, to add, I think there's also an element of the participants too, bringing in really great questions and helping lead. I think obviously like a base level of understanding and like a base level of content at the meeting as a single, like a standalone, but also like, you know, as I'm sure many folks know, like folks bring in really great questions and also helps steer the conversation in maybe a unique way, maybe towards the end or the second half of the presentation. So just wanted to add that piece too. But again, like Mercy was saying, materials and videos would be recorded too for folks to be able to follow up with.
It's, speaking of recording or engaging, so Naveed is our engagement outreach lead. And so continue to reach out to Naveed if there's any questions around engagement and outreach. If there's folks that you want us to present to, there's spaces that could use some of the recordings. We have as comprehensive as it is at this moment, an outreach list, but it continues to grow every day. So feel free to reach out to Naveed for any of those questions. And then for me, for general inquiries about Promise, if you want to chat about it at 6 a.m. on a Thursday, I'm down. Not really, just kidding. But at any time, any one of us in the PSCCN team would love to talk about anything about Promise or have questions to support. So I'll stop there because it is 5:52 p.m. and I want to know if there's any other questions. Still want to open up space for that before we close out. And if not, it is okay, because I appreciate you all hanging tight with us late on a work day. And we expect to hear more from PSCCN and about King County Promise very soon. At this point, it'll probably be weekly. But thank you for joining us. And again, reach out to Naveed or myself, or really anyone on the team if you have any questions. Okay, thank you all so much. Enjoy your evening, and we will be in contact very soon. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.